You know what? So okay, let's start right now. This is going to be the cutoff point where we're actually
has begun.
So Peter and I we warm up just by catching up with each other, and we're like, well, let's just start the stream. Someone wanders in, we can use this as an opportunity to make sure we aren't fucking this up. And sure enough, first time someone actually shows up, made sure we weren't screwing up the sound, because Peter was, I could only hear him, apparently wasn't showing up in the stream. So welcome to Voyager, please. Mess Hall number 4. It has been a long time since we have done one of these kind of mid-season. Let's take a quick break and talk where we're at in Voyager, what our thoughts are right now. I just looked back and I saw the last time we did one of these was middle of season 3, back when we were doing it on YouTube.
Look at all the weight I've put on. My boobies look so good now.
Everyone's got that COVID-15 now, bro. Come on. Yeah. Everyone's got it. Like, the only reason I don't have mine is that I had to officiate a wedding and I had to fit into my suit. And so the moment the gyms opened up back in Ohio, I was there like an hour and a half a day every day for 6 weeks to drop it. And I'm slowly putting it back on now, of course, because I'm done now. I don't have to fit into my suit. I think I've worn pants 5 times in the last 6 months.
If pants are on, fun is not happening, and that's a life truth.
You know, also who's not having fun? The characters in Star Trek Voyager in season 5. When we started the season, I warned you, like, new showrunner, darker focus, get a little DS9 chocolate in our coffee. We'll have to see how it turns out, right? Oh, and what do you think so far, man? Like, we're a little over halfway. I think halfway technically would have been Dark Frontier. Is the new tone something you like? Do you like the older Voyager sort of?
How can you not? Let's go through what we've seen up to this point. Galaxy Quest was between 2 and 3. Oh man, there's a lot of episodes in this thing. I gotta turn way back in the book. I'm sure everybody at home loves, and I start leafing through this goddamn. I forgot we had to start a new binder.
I'm still wondering what you're gonna do with all of these notes when we're done. Like, where is this going to go?
Buried with them with I die. So all of my ideas and turns them into a great TV show. Night was frustrating, but it was good. Drone was stupid. Drone was so bad I wrote bad on the front and circle.
It was stupid. With Niles Crane, the Borg's drone.
Was interesting, and I mean, it was nice to see them start touching on the fact that people should be pretty fucked up about some of the news they're getting out of the Delta Quadrant.
Definitely. Agreed.
In the Flesh was that terrible Boothby episode.
Oh, that's the one that had
Chakotay fucks.
Ellen Ty wanting to fuck Chakotay. Yeah.
Not bad.
Solid.
Once Upon a Time I did not like.
I defended that.
Amazing. Super duper fucking amazing. Infinite Regress was what?
That was the one where 7 of 9 gets multiple personalities.
MPD, which was surprisingly okay.
Yeah, it was Jerry Ryan turning on her acting for the world to see. It was well done on her part. She carried it.
Nothing Human, that's the one where the Muppet is laying on... that's a Space Mangala one.
That is correct. Dr. Cardassian Space Mangala.
We bitched about that one, but overall I thought conceptually it was all right. 30 Days was Tom's in the Brig. Tom Vict. Counterpoint. What was Counterpoint?
That was that one with the goofy one where Janeway's got the romance with the space fascist. Yeah.
Latent Image was dope. Bride of Chaotica was dope. Galaxy Quest was super dope.
Yeah, hey, if you want to listen to our Galaxy Quest review, and it's available to our patrons right now, you can just join for $3 a month and listen to us talk for an hour about Galaxy Quest. It was actually a really good time.
I see Doug is here, said Space Mangala is one of my favorites. What really hooked you? Because I accused it of some retread, and it was a little predictable, and ultimately, there were silly elements in that. Why would you possibly let B'Elanna die because of a hologram?
Yeah, the invented nature of the conflict that they were having from a moral perspective was my big hang up. Like, why is this even a conversation? Like, who the fuck cares, right?
There
I
was
know
a right way to frame it, and
there
that would have
was,
been that.
and I think we like script doctored it in our episode, if I recall. Like, we found a way to do the story correctly.
So there was a right way to do it, and I felt like they were clumsy. Said it was a bit predictable, but it was a kind of a classic Trek story. I will agree with that. It was a classic Trek story of a manufactured moral dilemma that splits the crew, and ultimately the captain has to make a choice. Normally, I think in Star Trek that results in the crew rallying behind the ultimate decision, and by the end, I think Janeway still had a lot of dissent on the ship, and she was a real bitch about, like, fuck you, get over it. I don't care what your wishes are, which is, of course, lulzy as hell by the time that the Doctor is falling apart episode, which was what?
That was the latent image.
Yeah, latent image. So that was funny that one good turn deserved another. But what I'm getting to, there's some really standout stuff, specifically not Dark Frontier.
Yeah, my drone was a dud. I continue to have a problem with Counterpoint. I think Counterpoint is extremely overhyped. I don't know why people like that one. I think In the Flesh is good, aside from the fact that it makes Janeway's decision making in the past seem completely batshit insane in retrospect. Because, like, go back, dial it back to the season three finale, season 4 Scorpion episodes, and suddenly Species 8472, having been completely reasonable all along, just makes everything she's done so comically indefensible that
make it any other alien race in the Delta Quadrant, I think we would have had a winner on our hands. But what I'm getting to is there's been very little in season 5 that I would say was clearly bad, and nothing that has really been detestable to the limits of, like, the 37s or Elogium, Prototype, Dreadnought, time and again. And we got a mention of Delta Flyers in the chat window. Delta Flyer just covered 37s. They broke somewhere over an hour and 3 minutes, which is very abnormal for Delta Flyers, which generally sticks right around 38 to half an hour, because a lot of their content's behind a paywall, so they're pretty limiting. But if you're going to listen to an episode of the Delta Flyers, do the 37s. There is so much real talk that they throw out there, like throwing people under the bus.
Oh, wow.
What assistant directors they did and didn't like. Just shitting mercilessly all over the episode. And it's funny, out of all the complaints, they don't ever address the fact that in the 37s, they talk about this wonderful, beautiful Earth 2 and how grand it was without showing you anything of it. But it's interesting to see Robert Duncan McNeil. He's got a lot of complaints that, like, completely contrast our complaints. We frequently say, hey, why don't we really get any access to secondary cast, reoccurring minor characters, other plot lines for people who aren't main cast characters or cast members? Whereas McNeil's like, why do we ever tell stories about anybody other than the main cast? There's no investment in these people. We should be focusing on our heroes. And, I seem to recall that by the end of 37s, I felt like there should have been a couple of token cast members, crew members, who stay behind on Earth 2, because it's just too good of a deal to pass up. And, like, you could have taken Howdy Doody, right, Baxter, or someone else and left him behind. And
the Maquis guy whose wife got killed.
Dolby. How
Dolby.
Dare you?
Yeah,
how
Dolby.
Dare you forget Dolby?
I did. What? Like, Dolby should be like, well, this seems great. I can find a new wife here. One that has never heard of Cardassians and certainly has not been,
murdered by them. So, I think they could have left some behind. I think it would have been really cool, especially as your season 2 opener, to have brought some of the humans from the second Earth colony along to replenish some of the people they lost. And that we would say, hey, we want more minor characters having a bigger role in the ongoing meta story of Voyager. And Robbie to say, or I'm sorry, Robert Duncan McNeil to say, we should have had more dialogue between the main characters about what they want to say. It's like, none of the main cast was going to stay. There's no risk there. And jumping to Course Oblivion or Saw 5 Voyager Extreme Edition, as I like to call it.
Stay tuned next week for that one, boys.
Oh, that hasn't dropped yet?
No, I'm saying.
Oh,
yeah. Ooh, that one's still in our larder for next week.
Lucky audience.
There's
never any real consequences for the crew. It's always going to go back to homeostasis. So teasing like, oh, geez, maybe Tuvok would have stayed behind on the planet. It's not going to fucking happen. But had it been, again, Baxter, Dobie, Wilder, just some guy you just made up out of nowhere like they did in Alliances or Allegiances. Look at that. We got a Matt F. and Slayer up in the house.
Hey, Matt. What's going on, man? It's good. Thanks for joining us.
Slow day in L.A.
Good to see you. Oh, by the way, if you hadn't had the chance, please listen to Matt's podcast, And Now We Drink. He just recently interviewed probably our favorite porn star, Xander Corvus, from who played a starring role in more ways than one in the Star Trek XXX porn TNG porn parody that we reviewed and absolutely adored, and specifically him, along with a whole bunch of other great episodes that he's done. And he also does a lot of Twitch streaming himself. He actually is, I think, you're playing Stellaris tonight. I know you've got a regular Stellaris game. You also you've played some Mortal Kombat. I think you've even played Fortnite. So check it out. It's
what
a good time.
Crazy side effect of Corona COVID to really propel the blossoming esports and stay from home grassroots content creation to the forefront.
Absolutely.
There's no movies, there's no sports, and I think any of the big companies like Blizzard or whatever that haven't fully capitalized on it are really shitting themselves. And that kind of ties in with Lower Decks. You can't get people together and do big Hollywood productions right now, and stuff like animation or things that could kind of be work from home created. Now's your time to shine. I've been into cartoons my whole life. I've never been shy about it. I like a little bit of anime. I like adult cartoons. I like to laugh. I like the serious stuff you can do with animation, and I like the fantastic things you can do with animation that would cost $1 bajillion if it was a real life production. So
BoJack Horseman, possibly one of the greatest television shows made, period, on Netflix. He's an animated show, one of the deepest programs you'll ever see about the concept of depression, animated show.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of meat on the bone out there.
And for Lower Decks to miss and squander that opportunity, that's one of our conversation topics, and now maybe is the right time to get into Lower Decks. Lower Decks, in case you didn't know, because that's what the viewership numbers are saying, is the latest production by the Secret Hideout, Alex Kurtzman Camp, Star Trek showrunner, that is set after the latest entry in Berman era Trek, which would have been Voyager.
It's after Nemesis, so it's after the last point in the timeline that you could possibly point to. So, not merely after Voyager, but because Nemesis happened after Voyager, obviously.
Yes, and was a major conversation point we had in preparation for Picard. But so this falls in that gap between sometime after Nemesis and sometime before Picard, which is a good time to play because nothing you do there is ultimately really going to matter. You're not touching anything beloved, and we already know the terrible dystopian future that the Federation is going to reduce itself down to by then. So your question to me was, who the hell is Lower Decks for? I don't know. Certainly, I don't think it's for children.
Right.
Um, I'm assuming, have not watched any episodes.
I watched some clips just to get a feel for it, and from the, I guess, 4 minutes worth of clips I watched, my presumption was it's too adult for kids and not smart enough for adults. It's like it's the perfect garbage that a studio makes when they're trying to play it too safe to actually capitalize on anything.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to try and cut them a break. I'm going to get off the Kurtzman hates train and try and find what the sweet spot on this is. And I think that it is a honest attempt to try to bring in the next generation of Star Trek fan, to someone who is not willing to put a full 45 minutes per episode over dozens of episodes per season to catch up on TNG and Voyager and DS9, let alone original series. And to have that light comedy, fun romp angle to get someone kind of their toe wet. Like, it's legit Trek. They're doing legit Trek stuff, and it's got this kind of slapsticky, obnoxious humor that's kind of in vogue right now. So I'd have to say, to honestly answer your question, I think Lower Decks is a starter pack for Star Trek.
It's a starter pack for Trek Zoomers, if you will, unlike us, OG Trek boomers.
And I wouldn't say that I necessarily hate it. I want to like it. There's enough stuff in there that I do like, that when I go back and watch the third episode, I don't feel like I'm getting a meat tenderizer and putting my balls on the table and holding the hammer over my head, knowing I'm going to strike down and sterilize myself like I was doing by the end of Picard. And maybe it'll change with the last couple episodes.
It's not something you love, though. Like, that's the difference. That Picard felt that way because you and I are in that subset of people who adore Jean-Luc Picard as a character.
Adored.
I have
past tense.
Loved Patrick Stewart as an actor, and we had the idea in our heads that Patrick Stewart understood what character he played and that he got what he was doing, when in essence he's an actor, not a producer, not a writer, not a director, and therefore him actually really understanding that wasn't actually true. And we suffered as a consequence of that. This is just some stuff, right? This is animated. It's just different characters. It's a thing you like.
You love. I love Next Gen. I love Berman era. I would have never said I liked Berman era before, and I think that's why I was resistant to watching DS9 and Voyager while I was in high school. Was following Generations, which I don't think I really cared for as much as some of the later entries, but the act of driving the Enterprise D into the ground, when I knew, there was write-ups in the technical manuals for the right way to do it, and that it was kind of a wave of the hand. Like, they just wanted to destroy the D, and at the time I took that. And keep in mind, this is like mid-90s, right?
Yeah.
Like, there was no internet, so to speak, and aside from a convention conversation, which I wasn't having as a little kid, a high schooler.
Right.
It was just a lot of bullshit I was making up in my head. I figured that Berman had destroyed the D, kind of like to really put Gene Roddenberry in the ground and establish, this is my new Trek. I didn't know the Enterprise D was a pain in the ass to film. I didn't know all the production.
Yeah, that looked bad on film, and that's why they had to dial the lights down in Generation.
That the model itself was hard to manipulate for different camera angles, and when they built the E, a big consideration was that if this thing is going to be easy for us to frame from a design element.
And so Matt, by the way, Matt brought up that somehow the X-Men movies should have taught us that Patrick Stewart wasn't dude, did you watch Logan? That actually is what gave me the most hope, was that his performance in Logan and sending off that character that way. I was like, well, shit, if he does a Logan style job for Picard, I'm there for it, right? He managed through his performance in that movie to tell a really compelling end to the story of the movie version of Charles Xavier that was really cool. So to me, X-Men is what lulled me into a false sense of security. Whatever. Three's not any. Three was Brett Ratner's fault. Fuck that. It was no one's fault but the studio. Just they fucked that movie into the dirt.
And in the end, Patrick Stewart did not have creative control. I don't believe he was an executive producer or any of that stuff. And at the end of the day, he was an actor in front of the camera listening to what a director was telling him. And
Yeah,
he was able
James
to
Mangold knew what he needed, and Patrick Stewart gave it to him.
And they spun gold, and it was awesome. And when he had overwhelming control, we got Picard. I don't want to go too deep in Picard and lose more listeners.
Right.
I loved Berman Era, and Lower Decks, I think, still kind of fits somewhere in that Berman Era as a conclusion. It's the first time since Nemesis that we have seen operations at normal on a Federation starship, because Picard was certainly the antithesis of that experience. So yeah, there's cool, fun stuff going on there. It's buried underneath super obnoxious characters, and I think they need to decide, kind of like the Orville did, do you at the end of the day want to tell a Star Trek story of some sort, or do you want to have a slapstick comedy? And Orville, I think Seth MacFarlane knew goddamn well that he wanted to tell a Star Trek story, and he bamboozled Fox into giving him
right
a Star Trek platform under the guise of Family Guy flashback poop and fart humor.
I do love that in the end he may have been managed to produce three seasons of TNG by bamboozling.
Did you ever get around to watching the third season?
No, I finally finished the second season. Like, I actually hadn't even watched that yet. It's just really good. I don't know else to just like.
What was the season 2 finale?
So the season 1 finale was the time interference thing. Season 2 was the war with Isaac's people.
Yes, which was fucking amazing.
Yeah, that was really. I mean, the show made a turn into being just the. In some ways, it's better than TNG, because it's a little bit more self-aware, and it's obviously we've advanced 25 years in making television.
Modern storytelling.
Yeah, like we're just better at doing TV stories now. And because you're a little bit self-aware about what you're doing, you can kind of lean into it a bit.
Yes.
And so when they actually make the turn in a lot of these episodes to like, okay, now we're going to be a real Trek story, it's some of the best stuff in that vein that I think has ever been made. The back to Voyager, though. I don't want to get too far off course.
So season 5 so far, going back to your initial conversation point, I would say that season 5 has across the board been a change for the better. And that's not to say we didn't get some really, really great to excellent episodes out of seasons 1 through 4. But I think the consistent quality has been increased in 5. The continuity, for the most part, has been very present, where the actions the crew is taking are following them along the voyage, the journey home, and we're not just hitting the reset button as
much
drastically as we had been. Brand Braddock certainly knows his way around Trek, and that's not to say he doesn't miss steps, but I think he is growing the show in a way that follows along the spirit that Michael Piller and Jerry Taylor had established, but is executing better on the premise.
It's taking risks that Jerry Taylor refused to take. It's willing to allow bad things to happen to its characters and to leave uncomfortable questions in their wake.
Yes.
And I think that is the powerful part about why season 5. Like, my other question was, this is kind of when a lot of other Trek shows hit their stride as season 5. When you look at DS9 and TNG, the best episodes are season 4, season 5, season 6. And I would say even in DS9, the last season's also quite strong. Not so much for TNG, kind of fell apart a little bit. And it's the maturity of the people doing the show. They kind of know the show they're doing now. The actors are comfortable at that point, and they've established an identity. And, I'm obviously a big fan of Brian Fuller, and that, you know, when he came in on season 4 and he's brought a kind of a different sensibility to writing, and a lot of his episodes have been among our favorites. That helped a lot. But Jerry Taylor was consistently, when she took over in season 3, remember, that's like, I'm gonna kill off Lon Suter because I don't want to deal, and I want to kill off Seska because I just don't want to deal with any of this other stuff that Michael Pillar did beforehand, because she just didn't want to have those kinds of like
awesome characters.
She didn't want to take those storytelling risks of having to continue to have those pieces in place. And, you know, Brandon Braga is not timid about that at all, and it's been for the betterment of the show. I agree. I will say though, I just am not a fan of Counterpoint. That is, I keep reading everybody's like, Counterpoint's a great episode. Counterpoint's the best Janeway episode. What an amazing episode. It's got all these takes that say it's the best. That's probably, aside from Drone, which is definitely the worst, next is Counterpoint to me. Like, that just was just a turd. I did not enjoy it.
But it was okay to good. And I think you just need to admit that, you know, I'm not saying your viewpoints are invalid, but, you know, that you're wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. I want to talk about the female voice. Before we do, I want to jump back over to Delta Flyers. Part of this hour-long extravaganza that they did on the 37s.
Right.
Garrett Wong starts heavily discussing conflicts he got into with assistant director, and then he kind of just spirals into, like, you know, there's rumors about that I was had all these problems on set, and that turned into bigger rumors that, you know, I was supposed to get fired, but they didn't fire me because I was on People's 50 Most Beautiful People, and that they fired Kess instead, and that wasn't, you know, there's all these crazy rumors, and I'm going to address all that, which got me like salivating, like I'm sure
juicy
it's not
drama,
be the pure truth, but just some actor to finally acknowledge and talk about Jennifer Lean's departure from the show. And even if it's going to be whatever the official party line is, like, I still have never heard an official party line. So bullshit or not, I'm super excited to hear him talk about that drama when it will eventually come up later in season 2. But to the feminine voice, we have given credit to Voyager that it was pre-Bechdel test and did it well.
Correct.
And that sometimes the feminine voice would work well, and a lot of other times it felt like the feminine voice came across poorly. But the effort was always there, which I thought was cool. And do you think that Branagh has extended that into season 5?
So when we had the big conversations about the feminine voice, it was early on in the show, and I remember, like, one of the most effective examples was B'Elanna and Janeway talking about Chakotay and why he keeps allowing himself to be manipulated by Seska. And it was the big episode where he goes off on his own little, like, personal crusade to deal with what he feels is like this is all his fault, this is all his problem. And we talked about, like, this was a great scene because there is no way two male characters or a male and a female character could have had this conversation that allowed you to understand both where they're coming from as well as their understanding of Chakotay. But the fact that there was two female characters, like, it all made sense in a way in no other circumstance would it have. And I'm thinking back to episodes we've had in season 5, and I have to say that's something that feels like it's fallen off, is using it. And maybe it is because Jerry Taylor isn't there. Maybe it is because at this point they found a kind of different groove to be in. Because, like, through season 4, I guess, like, the biggest example of that was Janeway kind of being a surrogate parent to pardon me, to 7 of 9. But that would be it. You know, like, if you think back to episodes in season 4 when Jerry Taylor was still on the show, like, what do we got? We've got Year of Hell. I mean, that doesn't really have anything around those lines. Mortal Coil doesn't really have any of that. You know, like,
I'm looking at the list here, right? Night had Janeway dealing with her personal demons. Extreme Risk was heavy interaction with B'Elanna and coming from a Bechtel, which is two female characters discussing a topic that's not a man on screen, right? Extreme Risk handled it well. Once Upon a Time was not really in there. Timeless certainly not. Infinite Regress. That was the multiple personality. Like, I think they're not beating you over the head with it, but I think that the female characters in the show are getting strong entries. They're standing on their own 2 feet, and they've got stories that aren't like, oh God, I've got Chakotay's baby, or geez, I hope Tom really does care about me after all.
When I say the female voice has dropped off, it is that instead of being a trope of storytelling that they're using either to their advantage or to their detriment, which was often the case in season 1 and season 2, one way or the other. Instead, the characters just have a better identity of who they are, and so it isn't necessary to do that. Like, we had the whole episode with, like you said, with B'Elanna with her secret racist Cardassian murder cave, and all of her PTSD and risking her life, out of this kind of spiraling sense of depression, and none of that, and everything had to do with B'Elanna's backstory, with what she had been through, with what her feelings were, and like trying to cope with all of that, and none of it was a quota. It had an element of her identity that was related to her femininity in any way. That is what I'm saying. Like, that element has fallen off in a large sense as a key part of the characters.
I'll also recognize that B'Elanna specifically, a lot of her feminine voice has just been replaced with push-ups and showing that she looks badass in a tank top.
And she does. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to actually just bring up B'Elanna because her character is one that I recalled not liking very much. And she's grown on me a lot in terms of respecting the level of effort that Roxann Dawson brought to her performances when she was called upon to carry an episode. We constantly talk about, like, all of the B'Elanna Torres episodes are Roxann Dawson having to just, go through a whole manner of bullshit, which is like, I'm going to get beat up by a murder hologram and have to deal with another crazy AI episode. I've got all this PTSD, and I've got, a secret cave where I murder Cardassians for fun. And
all of this while not having my own real eyebrows to face act it with.
Right. Like, I've got to relive memories of me being a Nazi and having a space Jewish boyfriend, like every time they take her up to it's your turn at bat, go. She does a fantastic job. We always talk about, man, she did a really good job. The episode might have had other faults. Writing might not have been there, but nothing about her performance ever lets us down. So that's been my, like, aside from Kes, which I think we agree was like where we thought we were going to hate Kes, and we're like, Kes was best part of the first 3 seasons. B'Elanna's my biggest surprise of things I've loved.
This leads into a question I wanted to ask you. And, as I'm listening to Delta Flyers and they're recovering all this stuff through season 1 and starting into season 2, even though the beginning of season 2 is still season 1 because 37s, which is one of my all-time worst, was a season 1 recording. And I think it wasn't until like episode 3 or 4 they actually got into like a legit season 2 production.
Yeah, script.
The early rendition of a lot of these characters is drastically different than what we're getting mid-season 5. If you had to pick one Star Trek Voyager cast member, I'm sorry, not cast member, crew member, right? So that the character, not the actor, but if you had to pick one crew member, main crew that you had to spend a weekend with, who do you think it would be?
A weekend. So, okay. So spend a weekend with...
Well, let's say spend a weekend and then, potentially spend a month.
All right. And the idea here is, who can I stand on a personality level that this is a person, this fictional person that I could deal with for that kind of time?
Not even deal with, but just genuinely enjoy yourself. And I'll give you a minute to think about it. I'm going to give you my pick.
Yeah, I need time. Thank you. Go ahead. Really?
Neelix. I think if you had to pick, and my second runner up
Wow.
would probably be Torres.
I would choke that filthy space cat. That is definitely
He's
not
not
my.
that bad though, man. Like, and you
He's
look at
not that bad, but over a month, dude. I'm sorry. I'm with Tuvok on that one. I just get the holodeck ready, man. Get my
I mean,
choking
that's
hands.
a luxury you have in the 24th century.
Ah,
Is you can occasionally
warm 'em
choke
up.
a facsimile of somebody. I mean, a weekend, I would say for sure would be Neelix. Guy looks like he's loaded with great stories. He's probably fun to get drunk around. He's a jolly dude who's laughing. I mean, jump back over to the course Oblivion. He's over there dropping tips that he knows about some crickets that make you want to fuck. Like, Neelix is a party dude. I want to party with Neelix, and I think Neelix is pretty chill in the downtime. Caveat: I would not want Neelix preparing my meals when he's
no gloves,
touching the food, licking his fingers, and then touching the food some more. That shit's gross. I hope the replicators are working, or at least there's like some sealed packages of Pop Rocks and Twinkies I can eat, so I'm not dealing with his granola root stew or whatever the fuck it is. But I think like even Torres, who's my second pick, just gets so cranky and so bitchy that like you're gonna hit that point where like, man, I'm tired of you, and I know you're gonna be able to kick my ass in a fight, and I don't like where that's gonna take us. And I think all the other cast members, crew members, just have some fatal personality flaw that if it had to be me in a room with them for 48 hours or longer, would really make that rough.
I'm gonna go through process of elimination here to get to my pick. It would not be Neelix. Weekend would be one thing a month. I'm pretty sure I would be with Tuvok on the choke train. Wouldn't be. I
also do want to say one thing else to Neelix. Neelix is a survivor, and having someone who's kind of a jack of all trades. If you were in a Voyager-esque, oops, my captain stranded me in the middle of nowhere, like. Good pick from like his skill card from the collectible card game. Probably got a lot of skills on it. I'm gonna look that up. You keep going.
I mean, if we're talking about a space hazard issue, my choices might change because I would just take 7 of 9. Like that's my number one way to survive is just take 7 of 9. It's not who I'd want to hang out with, but if we're talking about like friend ability / hangout potential. Not Neelix, too annoying. Not 7 of 9 has the personality of a wet noodle. Would just get on my nerves. Same with Tuvok, right? Like the Tuvok is the least of all of them as far as objectionableness, but like 7 of 9 is just actively annoying sometimes. It wouldn't be B'Elanna just because the Klingon nature just means it's just gonna eventually there's gonna be like all those nerves, and I'm not into that. It wouldn't be Tom because he's too self-pitying, like fucking rich boy, also convict, lamenting that his life should have been perfect. Oh, fuck off. I can't deal with that. I don't want to hear about stories about being in the womb, so it can't be Harry Kim. So that leaves me with 3 options. And number 1, I would hang out with Kes. Kes would just
I wasn't even including Kes. I apologize.
Yeah. Like Kes would just be a good time, hang out, just warm personality, she just wants to know about things,
Might microwave your brain, but probably won't.
As long as you don't get into psychic staring contests with her, like, I think you're safe. My number
looks great in sexy thigh-high vampire boots, but has to be a possessed warlord to wear them.
Becomes a sexy vampire cat.
There's a lot of strings attached to Kes at her peak moments.
My second choice would be Chakotay, actually.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. He's my third pick.
Yeah, he's got the sick vibrator cult drugs, as we've previously established, and
his hand jive is strong.
And he will definitely punch a motherfucker. Like he's got that in him. And then third choice would be the Doctor. I think the Doctor, let me specifically say post season 3, like post Future's End, matured person Doctor, would be number 3 for me. Oh, not Janeway either, just because I don't know which Janeway you're gonna get. Are you gonna get the Janeway who's cool, or are you get the Janeway who's absolute idiot? Like I don't know.
You know
Multiple
what?
personalities.
Let's go pick a fight with the Borg. No.
Can we
This
not?
weekend hangout is fucking over. We're
Space
done.
Space Pirate Janeway, I don't want to. No. Please no.
For the record, I did look up Neelix's Decipher Star Trek CCG card civilian, and he's got 5 skills. He's got anthropology, navigation, diplomacy, geology, and engineer. 6 integrity, 7 cunning, 5 strength. His cunning's all right. That's okay integrity, which I think is, well, this is late season. This isn't deserter him. And then he's got a bunch of throwaway trash skills, so on brand.
A bunch of useless skills. The Neelix story.
Mm.
The thing that really bothered us the most about the disease, which was an episode I think we did 2 back, was that there is this insane idea that they put forward that there are now strict Starfleet regulations about fucking.
First of all, I want to apologize to everybody listening at home that I somehow missed the obvious association and joke that Voyager, while docked with the generational ship, contracted STDs, crabs to be specific. The nanoprobe infestation that 90s hottie girlfriend artificially created to sabotage a generational strip went along the phallic docking clamp that was on Voyager and
penetrated Voyager's
just got all up in its
cervix.
pubic hair and caused a bunch of microfissure cracks, stress cracks. So I apologize. That was ridiculous for me. But I was just blinded by the baffling nature. And do you see these people in the other Star Trek groups cashing in on our hard work?
You so put out like I don't know if that. So there was a meme.
It's impossible not
on a shitposting group. There was a meme on a shitposting group a couple days ago, and when we just put this episode out not long ago, where we like talked about how stupid this is in a universe with Will Riker in it, and then someone made a meme to that effect. Maybe they're a fan. Maybe we're not the first people to have this observation. I want you to think about that.
But we have to be the first people to watch this episode in the past 2 years. I mean,
like Voyager's really popular on Netflix, but the idea that there is this hardcore Starfleet regulation determining if you can have sex with an alien is just the least on-brand Trek thing that we've ever heard. And we talked at length in the episode about that. But what I want to do is discuss with you what would actually, like, what is a regulation that would be in place that makes sense? Like, we make light of the idea that, like, Trek is a swingers free love paradise.
It's not reasonable that you cannot just go out and fuck any new race, that there's going to be protein incompatibilities. I'm going to go ahead and invoke, believe it or not, hang on to your seats, Mass Effect here.
Yeah.
There's major considerations, like can Taurians hook up with humans? And there's like, I forget what the no-goes are, but there's people out there that there's a protein incompatibility, and the ejaculate from one will cause serious problems with the other, and that's a concern for interspecies.
If I recall correctly, it is Taurians and Quarians that have the protein incompatibility with the rest of the sapient species.
Sure. So, saying that, hey, there's rules out there. Did you watch Star Wars Rebels at all? That was an animation that picks up pre-New Hope. I
did watch a few episodes, but it was like some of just the really big ones. Like I definitely watched the one where like Obi-Wan fights Darth Maul. Like that might be like the coolest lightsaber fight ever done on for Star Wars
dope.
Period.
And a lot of those cartoons, they have a problem where it's like 2 kiddie episodes in a row and then like an adult episode, and you cover some really good stuff in it. But like one Rebels shows that like these people are basically like for real terrorists, just bombing and killing and maiming and pillaging. So there's a Imperial protocol officer who, he's such a mean, terrible person. He's being mean to the guy who's just trying to sell apples, and it's like, yeah, that's a two-dimensional way to present it, but in a big intergalactic bureaucracy, like someone selling unsanctioned apples could cause COVID-19 or worse. Like these are things that you're going to have to address when you have an intergalactic community. Is that, you know, it's on par with you can't take mussels out of China and dump them in Lake Erie, otherwise you're going to have a population, you know, foreign invasion of you know,
Invasive species.
non-invasive species, right? So that's not fun stuff to talk about in a fantasy TV show about teleporting through space and fighting robot Nazis, but it's real. So yeah, you can't just go around banging things. People. The problem is there's hardline established genre that came before it that Will Riker fucks everybody and James Kirk fucks everybody at the drop of a hat, and even, you know, Troy and Yar out there getting their rocks off too. So
and in DS9 too, like Jadzia Dax gets all kinds of aliens strange. Like it's a little weird to start bringing it in now at that point. Like I think a regulation that would make sense is if it's a species that you just came in contact with.
First contact, sure.
Like, if it's a Federation species, one would assume that there's probably a medically understood compatibility or lack of compatibility on a sexual level with other Federation species, because now you're all part of the same, you know, intergalactic clubhouse. So, you know, there's information now about, you know, if this is going to work out and if you end up in an intimate relationship with somebody. So I totally buy there being a regulation for like first contact situations.
They didn't even need to go down that path, right? You had a funky situation where you have a very xenophobic race that does not want Voyager to be there at all. And of course, Voyager doesn't respect their wishes and forces themselves into the situation. And they even kind of touch on it. Janeway said, hey, we got strict rules on this. Don't wander off with these people. I'm trying to get something out of this deal, which is never really clearly established, to make it worth sinking 2 weeks and all these resources into. But stay the fuck away from these people. They don't want us here to begin with. Let's not exacerbate the situation. And then Harry exacerbating the situation and getting a bad case of the glowy.
Doing the exact thing that you don't want to do in that situation. Like that's all it had to be about was like, Ensign, did you really have to get your dick in the middle of my diplomacy?
And yes, 90s hottie was hot. Yes, he did have to. Props to Harry for that. But
I forget who said it on. It was I forget who said it on the trauma support group. Somebody said like, of all the people in the entire Star Trek galaxy, the only one who won't get that WAP is Harry Kim.
I'll let Casey know that you invoked WAP, which you should bring up WAP. I'm like, I'm not. I don't understand why it's such a big deal right now, but I'm sure she'll be thrilled to know that you brought that up.
Thank you for passing.
You didn't have to drag this huge plot, this major inconsistency, and this genre-breaking revelation that no, you can't just bang an alien. Silly, really? But you know that's I don't know, man. And that's been one of the cool things too, I'll say, about Lower Deck, is because the ship specializes on second encounters, right? There's a lot of things going wrong that you wouldn't think would be an issue, ranging from the first officer getting a mosquito bite, turning him into like a crazed zombie, to I forget what the other plot points are, but it's legit stuff that you sit there and wonder, you know, how do they handle this? What if that? So they've got, again, a solid premise on their hand and a lot of really good, kind of funny stories to explore with that tertiary function of the show. It's just sad that it's hidden behind super obnoxious slapstick Mary Sue nonsense.
The other kind of like Trek concept I wanted to hash out with you this.
Well, hold on 1 second before we go too much deeper. Doug is here, Matt Slayer, anybody else that's sitting out there in chat. Feel free to throw out your picks for who you'd want to spend a weekend with off the Voyager cast.
Yeah, and why. We have to know why. There has to be an explanation.
Lewd comments about 7 of 9 will be disregarded because, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I assumed from the question that there would be no sexual element. Otherwise, it's too easy, you know?
Yeah, so, Harry Kim all the way.
Yeah, 100%. Like boyish Asian face. It's just, that's my type. The other big Trek concept I wanted to hash out with you is the Prime Directive, because I got into a whole fucking
well, hold on.
like,
we
discussion
got
about this.
our submission here, and I can't walk away from this. Holodeck Tom Paris is not regular Tom Paris. Holodeck Tom Paris is super awesome. Assuming it's not moody, I'm building my car in the garage and neglecting my girlfriend, Tom. Super strong submission by Tom is here. Holodeck Tom, God, that's really the way you kind of have to look at a lot of these Star Trek Voyager cast members too. Is like mid 90s Batman action figures. Like, I don't remember Batman ever having like sonar attack with green wings stapled on his back. Like, that's not real. That's a bullshit. Just they wanted to make a new action figure, but that's how a lot of these Star Trek characters are. Like Holodeck Tom versus regular Tom versus pilot Tom versus undersea captain terrorist Tom.
Is it the Tom Paris that's going to creep into your bedroom, wake you up by just creeping on you, and then say, "Hey, will you come to my sex den with all of my porno tools all of my sex toys?" If it's that Tom Paris, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, who
would hang out with that guy?
Holodeck.
By the way, see you, Matt.
Holodeck programmer Harry Kim, yes, because he's got that volleyball team. Matt says the doctor, he can give me pills. Super valid observation. Matt using his brain, out there having a good time, doing future pills with the doctor.
And the doctor really needs friends. Yeah, the doctor needs friends too. He needs people to hang out with. And Matt would be a way cooler friend than the doctor had ever had.
Why, yes, I can get you high as balls.
We will find a way. I know the people.